Yeah, look, this is what we're good at, the aerospace machinery. I mean, people think that we've been supplanted a lot of different kinds of machinery in this country by the Chinese. We're the best at aerospace. So when your end product can't be moved, you're really bottling up a big supply chain that really reverberates through a lot of the country. I was with someone who's a major supplier to Boeing the other day. And it's like, how many can you keep these people on? You have to lay them off. What do you do? Do you know when it's going to come back? I did think that yesterday, I know the stock was down badly on this this June, July. I have to tell you, if you spoke to any of the CEOs of the airlines, nobody expected this thing to be April, May. The airlines did. People who cover Boeing may have, not the airlines.
Yeah. I mean, Ed Bastian at Delta told us last June it was going to take a lot longer than we thought, but he's not affected by this, maybe a little more candid. Now there's stories that the airlines, they're going to have to extend again.
Right.
We'll find out more from Boeing with earnings next week, but now they're scouring the planet for simulators. That's a story on the tape this morning.
That's what Greg Smith said. You got it. Look, it turns out that was the battle. I know the president was kind of a blunderbuss on this thing, but, the rifle was Dennis Muhlenberg, the deposed CEO, saying, listen, this is the same plan. And other people internally at Boeing saying, you know what, it's not the same plane. And when you read all these different emails and stuff, I mean, a lot of what they boil down to is a recognition that, United States pilots, they got 3,000 hours. It's embarrassing to ask them to go into a simulator. Other countries, 300 hours. They didn't want to put out two handbooks, basically saying, listen, lesser developed countries, we know your pilots aren't trained as long. Because, look, no one wants to insult a big client, but I think the pushback was that one group of people at Boeing felt that the pilots are capable of doing anything.
Yep.
And the other group was saying, listen, we got to go to the lowest common denominator. And the lowest common denominator theory lost, and now it's won.
As unlikely as it seems, yesterday, for the first time, at least in a couple of conversations with asset managers, they asked the question, or at least posited that this thing's never coming back.
Well, I mean, look, there's...
that is starting now. I mean, it may have been, but you'd sort of say, no. And it becomes harder to say absolutely not. That's ridiculous.
What's a debt picture in that sense? I have to raise a lot more money.
Yeah.
Cash flow.
Got to raise a lot more than 10 bill.
Right.
It's still unlikely, isn't it? I mean,
yes, I think. I mean, I've gone to them and said, guys, is it possible that you have to gut the plane and just put in a whole new engine? They said, no, of course, that's ridiculous. I think that that as this thing goes on longer and longer, the customers just are just going to rebel against this plane. And that's something, by the way, Boeing thinks is just fatuous, that logic. They're just never going to give you that. They're never going to say, oh, come on, it'll only be a couple of months. They're saying, listen, as soon as it goes into service.
At this point, I mean,
well, but maybe some people say this is the first
far.
time that. No, that's very true. I've finally started hearing that maybe they're under-promising and can over-deliver this time. Okay. I push back on them and saying, guys, there's a regulator. And the regulator may not want to go. And I even analogize to the FDA, of which they hate. They hate that analogy. Because they say, listen, this is people's lives. It's millions of people, blah, blah, blah. But the fact is, it's like, federal agency. Would someone can game a federal agency? Now, it seems like you could game the FAA.
Yeah, apparently you could.
But that's out the window. Don't you think?
I think that it's unlikely that will happen again. One would hope it won't.
Yeah, I mean, the EPA, on the other hand, that's who you want to be in front of.
EPA doesn't really kind of exist. They're sort of like, oh, yeah.
Right.
We rely on these agencies. CDC is a good example this week as we got that first U.S. case, which, by the way,
but they're good.
Really quickly, the Chinese presser today was probably net positive in that they're being pretty transparent about this virus. There's an argument that it's not as deadly as SARS was. Unlimited information.
Doesn't seem as deadly. I don't think that the Chinese were immediately transparent, nor do I trust their numbers any more than I trust their GDP numbers. I think their GDP is growing at half, probably twice as many people infected.